Hi there, and welcome to this lecture. In this video, we're going to explore the second Perl data type, array. So, what is an array? Array is a data type that holds ordered list of values. These values can be strings, numbers, decimals, and references. But as before, don't worry about the references at this point. Quick note, list and array are often used as if they're the same, but the list is the data you assign to array, and the array is the actual variable. How you can create an array is by saying my @symbol test equals parentheses and semicolon. Let's try to debug it now as we did before. So let's say print dumper, and in between there we're going to add our test. We're going to end it with semicolon, go back to our console, say Perl script.pl, and we're going to get nothing. And this is normal because we haven't added anything into our array yet. So let's do that next. Let's introduce a couple of values, such as a number, let's say 22, a string, which is going to say hello, and a decimal, let's say 1.22. Let's save it up. Let's go back to our console. Let's rerun the Perl script.pl. And what we're going to see now is that the variable remembered on the left-hand side, these are positions, 1, 2, 3, and the values being 22, hello, 1.22. So what happened here, since this is a list, we got all the elements printed at their positions as we have defined in our list sequence. So variable 1 is 22, variable 2 is hello, and variable 3 is 1.22, such as we can see here. Now, alternative way, if you're using with only strings and single words, what you can do is you can use this keyword called QW, which is for quote word, and followed by forward slashes and say 1, 2, 3. Now if you debug that, we're going to see 1, 2, 3. And this is quite a handy shortcut instead of using parentheses, quoting your strings. If you only need strings in your list and those strings are not separated by spaces, such as 1, 2, 3, and then you want to add a single string which is my 4, what you end up with is actually 5 items in the list. So 1, 2, 3, my being a separate item because it's separated by space, and then followed by 4. Now, in order to access all items in a list, and I'm going to remove this my keyword, so we have 1, 2, 3, you can use $sign followed by your list name, which is going to be test, square bracket, and the position of an element in your list. Now take note here that all the positions of items in an array starts at 0, meaning the string 1 is going to be at position 0, string 2 is going to be at index position 1, 3 at index position 2, and 4 at index position 3. It might seem confusing, but basically just think about it. How many items you have in your list, just add -1, and that's how you can access it. So for example, if I wanted to access, let's say, string of 3, I can do $sign test square brackets and index position of 2. Save this, go to the console, I print it out, which is Perl script.pl, and here we go. We're going to see variable equals 3 because we're accessing the index position 2, which is 0, 1, 2, and holds a string of 3. You can also override items in your list by using the same notation of index. So let's say I'm going to remove this. I'm going to still print out the test, and I'm going to say test. And let's say I want to override the item at position 3, which should be our string 4. And I want to say that this is now override. Save this, go to our console, print it out. And what I'm going to see now is 1, 2, 3, and override, because we override the variable which is at position index 3, meaning 4, with a new string, override. Now the interesting thing is that let's say I wanted to add an item at position 10. So I'm going to say test position 10 is override. Now I'm going to print out the list, And what I'm going to see is now that we have 1, 2, 3, 4 represented by items here, and then we have these undefined values that we looked at in the previous lecture, which means it has no value at these positions. And then the 11th item, which is -1, index 10, is override, which we just set now. Now, what if I wanted to access this last item in the list? So instead of needing to know how many items and the index positions I have in the list, what I can do, I can say -1. And actually, let's say that I wanted to not introduce a new item at position -1, but I'm going to say test, and I want to access -1, which should be the item 4 at the end of the list. If I save this, print this out, and here we go. I see variable position 1 is a value of 4. The same goes if I wanted to access -3, is going to be 1, 2, 3, which should be value of 2. I save this up, and I debug this, and I see that the value printed out is 2. A little bit confusing, because if we want to access items at the end of array, we actually need to start at position -1. If we want to access items from the first position, it starts at 0. It's just something to keep in mind. Now, another thing you might want to know is how many items you have in the list. And the way how you can do this is by saying my, let's say, define a variable size equals at test. Now, if we print out the test, go to our console, we're going to see that, oops, we have we actually have the variable defined as size. Apologies, we save this. We run the Perl script again, and we're going to see that it's 4. And that's right, because we have 1, 2, 3, 4 items in our array, which is called test. Now here what happens is that since we're trying to assign a list to a scalar, we're actually implying a scalar context, right? Because a scalar can hold a single unit of data. It cannot hold a list. So what it's going to do is going to take the list size and assign the number of items to this size variable. So another thing you might want to know, you want to know what is the last index in our array. The way how you can do this is by saying last. Let's say, let's define a variable of last index equals $ hashtag is going to be the name of our list, which is test. And now if we print out last index, we go to the terminal, Perl script.pl, we're going to see 3. And that is correct, because the index is 3. We have 4 items, as we debugged before, but the last index is 3, because we start at 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3. Now let's look at some very useful methods how we can quickly populate arrays using sequential numbers or letters. Let's say I want to populate my list with numbers from 11 to 30. You can go 1, 2, 3, 4, and well, I mean, that's actually 11, 12, 13, and so on. But there is a shortcut and a much quicker way. You can say 11 dot dot 30. Now we save this, and what we actually want to print out is this list. We override that, go to console, print it, and what we're going to see is that our array get automatically populated with numbers from 11 till 30. So all the way down from here at position 1 up to position 20. You can do the same thing with letters. Let's say I wanted to populate the array with letters from A, 1, 2, Z. I go to the terminal, I print this, and here we go. A, B, C, D, so on, and up to Z. And you can, of course, also do like age and just go to N. You go to console, print this, so G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N. So let's say I only wanted to access specific elements in my list that contains numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. I can do this by saying the variable name, which is array name test, and I can give index positions. So if I wanted to access only the elements 3 and 4, I can go 0, 1, 2, 3. So if I say 2 dot dot 3, Save this, say Perl, script.pl, I'm going to see 3 and 4 because index position 2 is 0, 1, 2 and index position 3 is 4. There are 4 commonly used methods when working with arrays. Let's explore them in more detail. Let's keep our list in a place and let's say I just want to debug the list itself and I'm going to write them out, the methods which are commonly used, which are push, pop, shift, and unshift. So what the push does, it adds an element at the end of the array. For example, if I say push, you provide the array name, which is test, and let's say I wanted to add number 20. Save this, and I print out my items, and I see 1, 2, 3, 4, and or new item, which is 20. Now pop removes an element from the end of the array. So if I say pop, array name, which is test, and save this, and I reprint, I'm going to see 1, 2, 3, 4, which is just the original list. Now shift is going to remove the first item from the list. If I say shift, add test, save this, rerun, and I see 2, 3, 4 because our item 1 got removed. Now unshift is going to do the opposite of shift, which you can imagine is it's adding an element at beginning of the list. So unshift, let's say at test 20, save this, and reprint, we're going to say 20, 2, 3, 4. So because we pushed an item on the list, we removed an item from the end of the list, we shifted an item from beginning of list, which was 1, and then we added an item at beginning of the list, which is 20. So another useful thing you can do with your list is sort them. And by default, Perl has this sort method, but it works with strings by default. So let's look at example of sorting strings using sort method. So I say H, O, P, M, L, A, B, C. Oh, space here. Apologies, looks like I'm missing a space. So to sort this list, you want to say at test, you want to replace this list with a sorted value, which is sort, and you simply provide a list. Because as I mentioned, the sort method by default works on strings. So if we try to sort this test list, we should get back the expected results. So let's save this, go to our console, say Perl, script.pl, going to be ABCDHLMOP. That looks all right because we had HOPM and so on and so on, and this does look like a sorted list of letters. Now, what if we want to sort numeric list? So let's remove this. Let's introduce 4 to 10, 22, and maybe 30. If I try to say test, sort, test, and print this out, so something does happen. It says 10 to 22, 34, but it does not look quite what we would expect. And this is because it's actually sorting these numbers based on a string context. What we want is to explicitly define a function after the sort method, which we're going to say A, being the first element what we received in this method, this comparison symbol, which is also referred to as spaceship symbol, and value B, which is the next item we're going to iterate over. I save this, go back to the console, and I print this out again, and I see 2, 4, 10, 22, 30. You can also reverse this by saying B and A, save this, reprint, and it's going to be 30, 22, 10, and so on. In the next lectures, we're also going to explore additional methods as join, split, grep, and map in Perl built-in function section. So these are definitely by any means the only functions we have to work on lists. So this is it for this lecture. We looked at what are arrays in Perl, how you create and fetch values in arrays, and we also looked at basic methods to interact with arrays in Perl. I hope you found this video useful, and I'll see you at the next lecture.